Okay.
I'll do it. Let me do it. I'll do it.
Well, we're on
I'm gonna
now.
do it.
It's already
Here we
too
go.
late. I already did it. So here we all are.
Gosh. The last show I did, it was like the Three Musketeers. I don't know what this show qualifies for.
That would be the
Four Amigos.
Musketeers.
Okay.
Yeah, I like the Four Amigos better. Yeah.
Yes,
You're right.
the
You're
Four
right.
Amigos. Yes,
Yep.
absolutely. I'll let you set everything up, Justice.
All right. So welcome everybody here. Thank you, Farzad and Brandon from Car Questions Answered here. We're going to be talking EVs, the most misconstrued things, the most common questions, and maybe even why Tesla is dominating the market because of the answers to those things. Lots of news going on right now. Farzad, I think you read a rumor just right before we came on. What was that about?
Yeah, it doesn't seem like it's confirmed. I was just stumbled upon it right before I came on the podcast here. By the way, thank you all gentlemen very much for hosting this and being together. I think this is super cool. What I love about this concept is we're getting we all come from different parts of the auto market, and it's like we're all getting together and discussing it together. And I feel like people from different backgrounds getting together and talking is what we need more of in this day and age. So it's just one of those cool things that I think hopefully we're starting a movement or being part of that. So the one thing that I read this morning is that it looks like there's a rumor that Tesla is in the process of buying a wireless charging company, but it is just a rumor. I don't know if it's true or not. I haven't had the chance to dig in a little bit more, so take it with a grain of salt. But it's funny because I've listened to Ray talk about that on Car Edge many times before, how it's a important part of the full transition to electric vehicles, if it were to take hold, is to make the charging as convenient and as easy as you can possibly make it. And so that's potentially Tesla getting into that game. But I think if they do get into that, there's other implications from a wireless charging perspective, and we can save that for later. But yeah, that's what I read, and we'll see if it's true or not. Be interesting to see.
And as I said before we went on the air, that would be the last step in Tesla's goal of world domination when it comes to EVs. Because if they can figure out how to really utilize wireless charging, especially in inner cities and things like that, who's going to compete with them? I mean, what other manufacturer would stand a shot? I mean, they're all trying to sign up for their charging network.
Yep.
If this is true and they own a company or are buying a company that would specialize in wireless charging, all bets are off. Tesla will, in my opinion, dominate the world more so than they do today. And every car that you buy comes with a free Twitter account. It'll be that simple. Yeah.
Yeah, as opposed to all those paid Twitter accounts out there. Yeah.
Yes.
I'm one of those.
But also, while we're talking about charging, before we get into the questions, I don't know if you guys saw the news story that Governor Abbott down in Texas said, if you're using public money to install chargers, like the Inflation Reduction Act is dictating, then you must include the North American charging standard plug on your chargers if you're using public money.
So that's what Governor Abbott said?
Yeah. So in Texas, if you're going to build it with public money, if you're going to accept public money to build your charger, then you got to have the Tesla charger as part of it.
He gets to dictate that?
Well, he's the governor and it's state money. So
it's state money.
So.
Yeah. He gets to have a word about that. Yeah.
Yeah. He would have a say on that. Yeah.
Wow.
I think what's interesting about that is it seems like there's a movement towards this NACS standard now on the EV world. One of the biggest, the toughest thing, I think a lot of EV owners that were not on the, say, Tesla supercharger network, one of the things that we're experiencing was that the reliability of charging and where they were located and the speeds and that they were up and running that was a big hurdle for a lot of people to get through. And now that, you have Ford, GM, Rivian now. Rivian came out yesterday and announced they're going to go on the NACS standard. My guess is Hyundai Kia is probably next.
Yeah.
If I'm a betting man, I think they're probably going to make an announcement here soon. So what's interesting now is you have a clear movement towards one standard, at least in North America, which is NACS. But you also have a lot of call it legacy EVs, that have the CCS port, which is it was the initial standard. It was a sort of, a bunch of automakers said, we're going to use this one, but now they're ditching it in favor of NACS. So I think the thought process in Texas is, since you have both types of cars on the road, instead of forcing people to buy an adapter, we're going to force the charge makers, if they want to take advantage of the incentives, they have to offer both types. Whereas before they only had to offer CCS. So to me, I think it's just I think NACS is obviously the winner here, and I'm curious to see if this will propagate to the rest of the world and not just to North America. I think the transition is going to be relatively quick, because you think about total percentage of cars on the road here, EVs in North America that are NACS standard, it's like 80% plus. So it's the transition should be relatively quick.
Yeah, and Farzad, like we just talked about this, a week and a half ago when I was on your channel, where, they got Ford, and then right after, I think we discussed that they're probably going to go after every OEM that wants to be on the on the network. That, this is Tesla's play, right? They're going to have the operating system, they're going to have the way to charge the vehicles. This is the way that they're going forward with their company. They're going to have their hands on every piece of the EV market, one way or another.
And that does lead to world domination. And I'm hyperbolic like my son at times, but really that's what it's going to boil down to, is that when it's almost like tissues. When you say tissues, people usually say Kleenex. Well, that was the brand. Okay, that's not what it was. It was the brand. And so what's going to happen is Tesla is going to become the generic term for anything electric, because they will own, as Brandon says, every piece of that pie that gets us there.
Yeah.
I'm curious. Can I pose a question to the panel? And I love to hear everyone's reaction, because, from my standpoint, I've been very embedded in like the Tesla world, and I'm trying to reach out to the rest of the auto market. So this is my education process. And of course, I'm super thankful for you guys to be around so I can ask these questions. But I'm curious, has the recent developments in your minds, have they changed your mind about Tesla and EVs, their adoption rate and how they're building momentum? Do you think that has changed at all, given the recent developments around Tesla, Ford, GM partnering, the charging standard moving a certain way? Has that changed anything of how you think about EVs or Tesla? I'm just curious. I don't know who wants to take that first.
I can go first. I can say talking to you guys in the last couple of weeks has completely changed my thoughts about EVs. Like, a month ago, I still thought EVs took like 45 minutes to charge. And the newer Teslas are not the case. I actually interviewed a dealer yesterday that has a Plaid, and he does a 7-hour road trip to go to 3 different auctions on every Tuesday. And what he'll do is he'll cut up half the trip, and when he goes and stops to eat lunch, he'll charge his Tesla at one of the charging stations and go eat lunch, and it's fully charged by the time he's done with lunch. So just by having that information, I think it's just a big fail on Tesla's part to maybe, they don't need to advertise, but maybe change the word to educate. And that way that people who are not just really, for lack of a better word, plugged into the ecosystem, know what kind of objections that they can get over, that they might be worried about going into an EV. And that's even something with me. And I follow the car market, and I didn't know a lot of this stuff about the Teslas.
I personally, I just think as every manufacturer starts to align with Tesla, it just seems to make the future for EVs that much more mainstream. Because there will be the one standard. And I always relate it back to between VHS and Betamax. And for consumers, VHS became the standard. For the entertainment industry, it's still Betamax. But I think it makes it easier for it to become more mainstream when everything is at some point in time connected with Tesla. They've already established a brand and a presence, and everybody else is trying to catch up to it. Well, the best way to catch up to it is to become part of it. So, yeah, I think I think it in the future, it makes it easier for people who are considering EV adoption to just go ahead and do it.
Yeah, and for me, I'm kind of in the same camp as you, Farzad. Been a Tesla guy for a long time, though I really like to promote a lot of other EVs as well. Hyundai and Kia make amazing EVs with great charging and stuff. So I am excited for that future. But as far as this charging goes, it is becoming sort of synonymous because nobody's saying Ford and GM are adopting the NACS. They're all, the media is like, oh, they're all using the Tesla cable. They're all using the Tesla charger. So it is starting to become the generic. Okay, so and EVgo and all these other charging networks themselves using the plug. They're all saying they're switching to the Tesla plug, So it is becoming more generic and sort of this thing out there. So you are going to get, as Brandon said, the Kleenex effect of all that stuff, where it just sort of becomes generic. But as Brandon and Ray said, what's needed here isn't Tesla advertising, it's education. And I do put a lot of onus, and I've said this for a long time, put a lot of onus on Tesla for that. As you said, they're 80% of the market in the US on the EVs. But so many people are uneducated on the questions or have all these misconceptions. And, and that's on Tesla, that they're not out there educating people. People still have all these old things. The battery replacement is probably the number one I get all the time. Just, and you're in 5,000 miles, you're going to have to replace that battery. It's going to cost $20,000. Like, no, that's just not the case. And it's on Tesla to come out and make this education happen.
Can I add one thing real quickly? I think it will become important for whoever is running a charging network, that they'll advertise that it accepts the Tesla plug, not the NACS. Okay, it's so much easier to understand. Oh, well, does this use the Tesla plug? That's what people want to know. They don't want to know, is it NACS? They're going to want to know, is it the Tesla plug? Because if it's the Tesla plug, I already have that. And that's why I think it becomes the generic term for all of this. They become the Kleenex of tissues. It is what it is. I mean, they might not have spent any real money on advertising, and they might not have spent any real money on education or educating the public out there, but they have, over the course of time, developed a name and a standard that is now synonymous with everything that has to do with electric vehicles.
So I have a question going back to the advertising thing, and this is probably one for Farzad, but if they did ramp up their advertising and get a massive bump of orders in, can they actually service their orders? Are they intentionally not advertising because they can't keep up with the potential demand that it might cause?
That's a great question. So that's the advertising question and trying to create more awareness will bring a variable that is, there's already so much demand for Teslas without advertising. So their total capacity right now is about 440 to 450,000 EVs per quarter. So they're almost at 2 million yearly, with barely any advertising globally. They do advertising in China. I think they do a little bit in Europe, but they don't do any in North America. So if you start creating awareness that says, hey, so, the charging thing, yeah, it's not as bad as you think. It's actually very convenient. The battery thing, you don't have to replace it. 8-year unlimited mile warranty. I was in the service supply chain. The big crates that had the high voltage batteries, they barely, if ever, moved. So I have data that says these things ain't really getting repaired, barely, if ever. That's just the data set that I have from working there. And then you just go down the list of dispelling those myths. And by the way, the cost, you can buy Tesla for a Model 3 after incentives in the US, I think is somewhere around $33,000 now. And then you don't pay for gas, you pay for electricity, which is about a half to a fourth of the cost. So you start going down the list, and then people are like, holy crap, okay, so I can actually afford a Tesla, and I've been thinking about doing one. So it will create an issue for Tesla for sure. So I think their strategy will probably be get the facilities ramped up a little bit more, try to bring in more capacity ahead of time, because they did say that they are going to start advertising. Elon Musk at the shareholder meeting said, after Meet Kevin asked him that question,
right,
who's a finance YouTuber, he's like, yeah, well, we'll advertise. So they will have to put in capacity. Otherwise, they're going to run into the issue they had during COVID, which is they had 6-month plus waits, and they had to make the prices ridiculously high so people would stop ordering them because they had a 6 to 9 month backlog. So, and I think the company, every EV maker should be trying to move away from having the customer wait to get their EVs, because this is the perfect time to have them available as momentum grows. Like, you don't want people to wait to get their EVs. You want people to just be able to go to a dealer or go to the Tesla store, place their order, and then maximum 1 to 2 weeks later, you can go pick it up, right? So it's a phenomenal question, and it will be a problem for them to execute properly. Otherwise, people will have to wait to get their cars. And I think the Cybertruck especially is going to be a perfect case for that dynamic once it launches next quarter, because that thing has got 1.5 million reservations, and they haven't even started the damn thing. So it's going to be fascinating to watch.
Yes, but so many of our members, Farzad, think the Cybertruck is never going to come out, that it's just all a hoax.
I'm one.
Okay.
Yeah.
What would you like to know?
I'd like to know why there's 1.5 million orders and they really haven't started building the damn thing. I mean, how much of a backlog do you really need to say, okay, it's time to start building this stuff?
Well, Ray,
Yeah.
I think you know the answer to that. You're just not thinking all the way through on that. I believe the word you're trying to think of is gigapress. That has to sort of be delivered and installed before they can start making it. So there was some wait time on getting the gigapress, right?
And when did they first show the Cybertruck?
2019 November.
Yeah.
So almost 4 years ago. What was?
Yeah, I don't know if you heard about this thing called a pandemic, but we had this little blip in time there where like everything was shut down and no one was doing anything, including the people who make the gigapress.
Mike, you are a Tesla fanboy. You will come up with any excuse necessary for why we are so far behind the 8 ball when it comes to the production of the Cybertruck, and why people like me think it's never going to happen. Now, granted, I understand it's going to happen, but it's never going to happen in the numbers that they need it to happen to satisfy the 1.5 million people that have had an order for it. It's reminiscent of I hate to say this, of a Ford Maverick, hybrid, where I get emails from people who literally ordered 2 of them, a gentleman who ordered 2 of them last September, and he keeps getting emails from Ford saying, hey, we really appreciate your patience. And the guy's thinking, it's not I want the damn truck. Okay. And they still don't have a build date for them, and they don't have anything for them. And we're like 10 months in. That erodes customer confidence in a manufacturer when they're willing to open up an order bank and unwilling to actually produce the damn vehicles. So I understand there was a pandemic. Okay. I get it. But at some point you had to say, we're never going to be able to build all these. Let's stop taking orders, once you reach a half
They
a
did.
million. Let us get caught up on the first 500,000 before we really start pissing off the other million. That buys you bad press, not good press.
They actually go ahead.
I was just going to push back a little bit and say, hey, Ray, how long does it take to get a RAV4 Prime?
It takes you. The same thing applies to
takes,
that.
yeah,
which
but
is why Toyota
but we're not saying
market share.
But we're not saying Toyota is not legitimate. They're not building this vehicle. It takes 18 months to get one, but we're not like, hey, they should have just stopped orders.
The difference is it's been around and they don't accept orders because it's a Toyota and you can't order one. Okay.
Well,
better than
I think
most. You work
Farzad's
going to
answer the ordering part of this.
Okay.
So I'll let him go on that one.
All right. I'll try my best. Here we go. All right. So it's multifaceted. I think there is, if I view it from a manufacturing perspective, I think Tesla has a reputation for being late with everything. So that's number one, which is something that I would 100% agree they need to work towards. And Elon Musk himself has come out, when the leader of the company is an eternal optimist and he's always missing deadlines, the culture of the company is going to be built that way. But the flip side of that is that it enables these insane things that end up happening after a while, right? So it's kind of a double-edged sword. From the Cybertruck's perspective, so the pandemic definitely had a big impact in the supply chain. These are brand new technologies, brand new supply chains that have to be spooled up. No one has made a car like this before, with an exoskeleton and single piece castings with that size of a car. So it requires a lot of new technology. And so when you have the pandemic kick in, it's kind of very unlucky. It's like all these people that were supposed to be using the resources to build that, they had to shift it to make sure the economy doesn't collapse, right? So they had to move resources around. Then you have the battery shortage component in that same exact time period. So they don't have enough battery materials available for them to get the Cybertruck ramped up. And then the other piece of it was that the demand for existing cars, so the Model Y, the Model 3, especially the Model Y, the demand was so high that it made no sense for them to ramp up any new products at the time. They're like, well, people just want the freaking cars we have now and barely have enough to make 1 million of them per year. We have to figure out how to make 1.7, 2 million of them per year. So all these things combined to basically, for lack of a better word, put Cybertruck on the back burner for a while because they had to get the rest of the supply chain and manufacturing ramped up to be able to do the Cybertruck. And I agree with you that the wait time for those 1.5 million will be long for sure. And, their plan is to get to 500,000. I think rumor, again, he said somewhere between 250 to 500,000 units per year once it's fully ramped, which will take a few years to get there. So it's potentially, unless people start canceling their orders, you could be still waiting for a few years to get your Cybertruck. But I think that the bigger question becomes, what is the total capacity of electric pickup trucks today in America? And it's very small. It's F-150 Lightning, the Rivian R1S, and that's about it. And those two units combined yearly is like what, 50,000 a year, maybe 100,000 a year. So that's the equation that I think through. So yeah, you'll have to wait, but literally there's nothing else for you to buy unless you can get a Rivian or an F-150, which bodes well for any competitors, right? So that's a little bit of the picture there.
So my question is, have all these people that are waiting for these Cybertrucks, have they seen it? Have they seen how ugly it is? They don't care.
You keep mispronouncing the word beautiful, Brandon. I'm not sure what that is. It must be a Southern thing that you're just.
It's funny Brandon says that because I literally went on my really good friend down here. His name's Travis. I did a video with him on Sunday. So he's born and bred Texan. He worked at the oil field for like over a decade. He has an F-250 diesel, and he loves the hell out of his truck. He's just like the most stereotypical Texan you could ever think of, right? And I love that guy to death. And we were driving around in my Tesla, driving itself and whatever, and he says the same exact thing. And he's like, "That is the ugliest freaking thing I've ever seen. It has looks only a mother could love, right?" and I keep telling people, wait until you see it in person. I've seen this thing in person multiple times. I just saw it at the shareholder meet in May or April, whenever the hell that was. It feels, I don't even know what the dates are anymore. But in person, it's a completely different story. I'm very curious to what I'm really looking forward. You two, especially Ray and Brandon. I want to see y'all's reaction to the Cybertruck once it's out on the streets. I think getting your reaction is not only going to be amazing content, but I'm really curious to get your take, because I think that's the kind of, if Tesla really wants to get really mainstream and become a dominant player, that's the kind of market they have to dig into. They have to dig into the traditional pickup truck buyer and all that good stuff.
To piggyback on what Brandon said, okay, the Cybertruck is the pickup trucks what troll dolls were to dolls. Okay, it's so friggin' ugly that it's cute. Okay, so I agree with Brandon 100%. Have people actually looked at it, and it's almost like going to like the world's most expensive restaurant and finding out the food sucks, but you're not going to tell anybody because you just overpaid so much for it. So there's 1.5 million people out there waiting on this Cybertruck, telling themselves, "Oh, it's really beautiful," when in reality, it's really not.
It looks just like a DeLorean to me, just a big DeLorean.
I mean, they're the same color, but other than that,
I mean,
I'm not sure about
they're
that.
Both triangular shaped, and they're both ugly. So,
well, I've seen it in
you-
person, not the one that Farzad did. I saw one of the originals down in LA
At the museum.
At the museum.
Yeah.
And it's beautiful. It's massive, but it's beautiful.
I think the proportions of it, because proportions are a big deal in a car, and it's hard to get the proportions on a picture, especially when the car itself is already a 2D. It's a triangle. It's literally a triangle on wheels, right? It literally is a triangle on wheels. But once you see it in person, the proportions kick in, and you start seeing some of the curvatures and the lines, which it has, surprisingly. And then the finish is super reflective. So in the sun, you can literally see the entire world around it. And it looks, I don't know. I'm just going to shut up, and I'm going to let you guys see it in person. And I bet you're going to think differently. That's my bet. We'll see.
I have absolutely no faith in that I will convince Ray that it is a beautiful truck, or that he would ever want one, and probably Brandon either. I just I don't think it. But I will tell you, I love it.
Yeah, so I'm coming along on the Teslas. I saw the Plaid yesterday. A buddy of mine came by the shop and showed me his, and I mean it's awesome on the inside. The outside still but I mean the inside of them are really cool, and I like the no maintenance. So I'm getting there. Just keep working on me. We'll do an interview with Farzad every month or so, and I'll get just 5% farther every month. So we'll work on it.
I think that's what we did with Ray. We just slowly moved him to, but that's I think Farzad, you mentioned this at the outset. That's sort of what we try to do. I don't try to convince anyone that they need to go out and buy a Tesla. That's not my thing at all. As a matter of fact, my sister's looking for an EV after driving my Tesla, and I said, before you just jump into Tesla, let's look at what else is out there, and you can see and try. But mine is just to educate people, since Tesla's not doing it, on the misconceptions about EVs, because I think the more the Rays and the Brandons of the world find out the realities of numbers and things, that a lot of the hesitation drops off to where you're like, okay, well, it is a viable vehicle, and it's not a 13 Nissan Leaf.
And I think this is where it's important for other automakers, not just Tesla, right? It's important for the Fords, the GMs, the Hyundais, the VWs. They all, it's, if it really is going to be the future, and it's going to be the, a world of no maintenance, very low running costs, great performance, even at the cheap end, because you have an electric motor that has instant torque and all that stuff, right? It lends itself to a really good driving experience. It's going to require an industry-wide effort to actually prove that. It can't just be one player, right? It has to be everybody, because I think over time people will want variety, they'll want choice, and we're not even going to talk about the self-driving portion of it. Let's just talk about people actually wanting to drive their cars. People will want some sort of some level of variety, and so you need compelling vehicles from everybody. And I think one player, is proving that, which should has a blueprint for everyone else to at least pick and choose the things they want to do as well, and potentially even tap into the same supply chain Tesla has built to maybe take batteries or whatever else they need. But then they need to prove out the technology and that form of transportation as well, so that people can actually adopt it. It's so that it's not just like, hey, let's move for the sake of moving. It has to be because it's cheaper and it's better. And if those two things get proved out, then it should take off. But if neither of those two things are true from a whole industry perspective, it doesn't deserve to be taken on, because it's not actually better for the consumer. That's how I think about it.
Can I ask Brandon a question? No? Okay. It's I know it, based on the type of vehicles that you sell at your dealership, it'll be years before you will find yourself in a position to be able to sell pre-owned.
We'll be out of business by that time.
Oh, come on, man.
Amazon will already take over the used car market, or whoever's going to redefine how used car sales look like.
No, but seriously,
you're right. You're right.
At some point, it might be 10 years from now, I don't know, there will be EVs that will be inexpensive enough as used cars that you'll be able to sell in the well, maybe by that point in time, cheap vehicles will be considered $10,000 as opposed to the $3,500 to $5,000 type of vehicles that you specialize in today. How do you see that impacting how you're going to have to try and do business in the future?
I mean, honestly, the future of the used car market, I jest a little bit about what I just said, but I kind of think that's what's going to happen. So let's say that kind of thing doesn't happen. We don't change the whole way that the used car market looks as we're seeing it today. But I mean, all these, there's so many small used car dealerships that once you bring on the need to actually charge these vehicles, almost every day. I mean, you're not going to. I don't know the answer to this. Do the vehicles, does the battery range go down as these cars just sit? I know it has to use some kind of power just sitting there, but how often would you have to charge an EV if it just sat without being driven?
That's a good question. So it depends on the manufacturer. If I use my Tesla as an example, so you can have multiple settings that say, if you want it to be connected to your phone at all times and you want to have, cabin overheat protection, which keeps, doesn't let the cabin go over a certain temperature, and it'll kick in, the AC to keep it, say, under 105 or whatever the temperature you want it to be. So those things will naturally use a lot more energy. But if you're like, let's just sit here and don't connect to the phone, just literally hibernate, I can probably let us sit on a lot. It'll probably lose about 1% per day. And so if it's charged at 100%, yeah, that's like, you could keep it for, potentially a quarter, but it depends. It depends on the car, depends on the size of the battery. But if you're just letting it hibernate, you can keep it on the lot for a while, for sure.
Okay, so back to Ray's question then. So what has to happen for infrastructure for the used car market to be able to be equipped with the necessary things that you need to have used cars? All these auctions would have to have. Think about the amount of charging stations an auction would have to have. I go to auctions that run anywhere between 2,000 and 4,000 cars a week. So how many charging stations is an auction like that going to have? Because, I mean, these cars that come into the auction, they're already getting there without any gas. It's going to be the same thing, probably even worse as far as charge goes. And then just go to the next step. All these small mom and pop used car dealers, there are more used cars being sold by us than there are these big franchise dealers, right? So you're going to have each one of these locations suited out with these charging stations. or these chargers, whatever. But the problem is most used car dealers don't own their lots. So they go around between these different locations that aren't necessarily decked out to be used car dealerships. Some of them are in little strip malls. I mean, some of them are in places that were like little retail stores. So anytime a used car dealer goes into one of these new locations, if there's not some kind of portable option made by Tesla 10 years down the road, which I'm sure there's going to be something where they just outfit where they can just plug it straight into the wall. But if a dealer goes into one of these locations and wants to keep 50 to 100 cars like us, I mean, we're going to need multiple ways to be able to charge these vehicles every day. Unless we're just driving them to like a charging station, kind of like a gas station, like what we're doing now. But I would assume that that's not going to be the way. 10 years from now, people are going to charge these things in mass at their own location. I think that's probably is the play, and something that Tesla is probably going to come out with. So it just depends on the technology at the time. But as far as pricing goes, we have to see. We still don't have a sample size of these cars being around for 15, 20 years.
Sure.
And we need to see how they hold up.
Yeah, I think that's a fascinating question and kind of like highlights the complexity of the transition, right? All these logistics have to be figured out for even a used car dealer or an auction to actually be able to sell these things reliably and not have a brick on their lot. I think one of the benefits of an EV is that you could just use a 110. You know, a 110 is a trickle charge. But the one thing it will do is it will make sure you don't run out of battery. It will charge it very slowly. So I think it all depends on how much they're planning on letting the car sit on a lot. If they're going to be stationary, say 99% of the time, a 110 line should work. And so I'm guessing that's going to be like if every parking spot had a 110, or they had some sort of wireless charging solution, or let me get even a little bit crazier here. In the case of a Tesla, they could just, if the self-driving comes to fruition, which I think it will, they'll just freaking rotate. They'll just, they'll park, they'll wait for the car to charge. They'll set up a wireless charging station or something, or a wired station that moves itself, or I don't know, they'll use the freaking Tesla robot to unplug and plug it back in, right? There's all these crazy things that start coming to fruition, where you could have basically 1,000 used Teslas that drive themselves, and they just know when to go to the charger, and they rotate through, and then in a couple nights, all cars are super charged to full, and you don't even have to worry about it. So it all, like you said, it all depends on the technology that you have. But I think the key thing is that the EV can use existing infrastructure. You don't need anything special. You can just use a 110 theoretically to at least keep charge. It all depends on how many cars you have and how much room you have on the lot. And then that's if there's enough demand for it, my thought is that the supply and demand will kick in, and somebody will figure out how to do it.
Another problem that comes into question with moving to the EV stuff is, Ray knows this. The auto market, we're stuck decades behind technologically and actually moving forward to change how we do. I mean, if you go to an auction right now, it looks like you're walking into like the 1980s. That's what it looks like. I mean, there's, other than allowing online bidders at this point, and really there were tons of auctions that before the pandemic, online wasn't even an option. They had to adapt to do this. And maybe that's the argument for saying when these EVs come online and they're more mass, that these auctions will adapt to that. But it's hard to teach old dogs new tricks, and the car market is a very, very, very old dog.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree with that. It is, car dealers do what they do because the way they do it, because they've always done it that way. And most car dealerships are resistant to change. So they will always say, hey, this has always worked for us. Why do we need to find a different way to do it? So yeah, I think it's going to be hard as an industry for it to change, for the sales model to change, for the way we do things in the industry to change. It is the most change-resistant industry out there. The word tracks that salespeople are taught today are realistically in many cases, the same word tracks that they were taught in the 1960s. So a lot of this stuff has never changed, and it is going to be difficult unless we get a whole new breed of owners, much younger, much more technologically savvy than what we've seen in the past. I agree with Brandon. It's gonna take forever for that aspect of it to change.
Yeah, I agree. And, to your point, Ray, I think some of the most EV resistant people are the actual car dealers, the people who are out there buying them at the auctions and everything out there. They tend to be the ones who already don't like EVs, even though, they may not have all the answers. It's your thing. They're stuck in the way, and that is what it is. And they, these tend to be the ones who feel like EVs are being forced on them. So they're sort of pushing back on that. And, so you're right. I think there's going to be a problem at the auctions for quite a while and trying to keep up with that mentality.
Car dealers as a group tend, and I don't know if you'll agree with me on this, Brandon, but they tend to be more reactive than they ever are proactive. Okay. they don't want to look so far ahead that they could proactively plan for what that future may look like. They will react to what is going on, and usually the reaction is late, but that's just my experience.
Well, for most part, the car dealers have to be reactive because they're broke. I mean, most car dealers don't have any money. I mean, that's why we have this floor plan problem that we have right now, and that's why you see so many spikes and just the peaks and the valleys in the wholesale data is because car dealers are so reactionary, but they have to be because they don't have any money. So they can buy up when sales are good, and they can't when sales are bad. They're not preparing because they're just not able to because they don't have any money.
So let me ask you this question: So given these data points that car dealers are way more reactive than proactive, and they're not financially well run, is what it sounds like. They're very dependent on whatever the hell is going on at that time to make something happen, right?
Right.
Isn't a car dealer that is proactive, aren't they going to have outsized success in this kind of market, especially as the shift to EV continues? Like, is there a world where, if a dealership does embrace the EVs, that they're just going to absolutely kill it? Is that a good way of thinking about it? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
I mean, it doesn't matter what the market's doing. A well-prepared dealer, I mean, the market could do anything, and because we're not tied to any kind of floor plan, we're not tied to any kind of debt, we're going to kill it in any situation just because we have cash to prepare for whatever's coming there. And it's not really going to be a factor of the market and the market moving or whatever. We can even be behind the market, and just because we're financially placed the way we are, we're going to be fine. And other dealers that are in a similar situation that we are, and not leveraged up to their eyeballs and have to just live and die off each day, it's easy. It's so easy to make money times are hard right now. It's hard to sell a car, but we can still make money because we're just not in debt and having to pay and peel off money that we're making off of each one of these sales because of debt. The car market's easy. It's very easy. You just have to be smart about how you spend your money and what kind of leverage you want to take. If you do want to take some, we don't take any. So we're positioned to just move ourselves however we need to at any given time. And I would say probably 80%, that might even be a low number, but at least 80% of dealers are not positioned in that way. They have to live and die by the sales that they're making that month.
And to shed a little more light on that, I think your large publicly traded dealer groups have the financial wherewithal to be proactive, and could, as Farzad suggested, really kill it because they were proactive. So, I think when you look at like Lithia or AutoNation or Penske Automotive, large dealer groups that have always been willing to invest large dollars in technology and trying to position themselves slightly differently, I think yes, they could be proactive enough to really kill it as the EV market takes off, because they have the financial wherewithal to do it. Where smaller mom and pop stores, if you're a small mom and pop Ford dealership and you want to be in their electric vehicle sales, you're talking, you have to invest somewhere between $500,000 and $1 million just to be able to say, yeah, I want to do it. And a lot of those dealers, those mom and pop dealerships, don't have that extra money to do that. So I think the large publicly traded groups will see that they're in the financial situation to be able to.
So it's going to depend on the customers too. So a customer that is a Tesla customer, even if they're buying one that's a little bit used or whatever, I mean, like, we can keep 100 cars at a time, but they're still not, I'm still a small dealer. They're not coming to me for a Tesla. They're not coming to me for even some of these newer electric vehicles. They're not, even if I had a bunch of newer version cars, just because of the way our dealership looks, because of the way that we're advertised, we don't have some massive franchise sign out front or anything. A consumer like that is not going to come to me for their product right now. That's going to look completely different in 10 years, and I don't know how it's going to look, but the kind of consumer that's going to buy a product like that, they're not going to a mom and pop shop. They're going to a big dealership.
That's helpful. Thank you. Thank you for sharing some light there.
Who's next?
Well, we actually have a couple good questions here from somebody that we might know. Mrs. Car Questions asks, how low do you see EV prices going? Farzad, I think this plays into Tesla's plan on the whatever Model 2, whatever we're calling it.
Yeah. So I would love to run through a scenario, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, because this could be a potentially wild way of thinking about this, but I really want to get your thoughts. So definitely, as Tesla and others, but it seems like Tesla is the best position right now as they go down market and they go to cheaper and cheaper vehicles. So with this Model 2 or compact car, whatever you want to call it, that's going to start at 25 grand. This is going to obviously impact used EV prices, on top of the supply chain ramping up and making the costs cheaper. And if Tesla is going to continue on the path of let's make them as affordable as possible, then the entire market's going to go down. But the one variable that is really interesting to think about is if we live in a world where the consumer decides that they no longer want gas cars and they want EVs, this is a scenario that could play out, and I don't know when. The demand for the EV is going to be much higher than the supply, because it's going to take potentially decades to get to the existing level of capacity in the US, which is like 14 to 15 million cars per year, is the total car capacity that is available for manufacturing. And we're currently at, I don't know, 2.5 million, maybe 3 million with all automakers. And if it's growing at, say, 50% per year, you could get there in like 5-6 years or something like that. But depending on when that transition happens, you could have more demand for EVs than supply. And you could have like a COVID situation again, where the EVs could actually go up. Even used EVs, they could go up, because people are like, we don't want gas cars anymore. We want EVs. Now that creates a crazy situation on the gas car side that could make those car prices so low that people are like, but I can get a gas car for like way cheaper than I could an EV. And that could balance the market out again. So I think net, the EV prices will come down over time for sure. But I do think that their long-term, the residual value and how low they go will be, let's say, better for the owner than if you were the buyer, because there will be, I believe, more demand for EVs long term, especially if there are incentives from the government, and especially if people decide that this is the technology they want over the gas car. So that's how I think about it.
So you're saying that there has to be some kind of crazy situation for that to like justify. I mean, to play itself out. I don't think so. All they're just going to take is like one war in the right place or something like that, and gas prices can go to $20 a gallon. Gas prices go $20 a gallon. Now everyone wants an EV. Doesn't matter if you're pro EV, pro whatever. You're not paying $20 for gas if EVs are just readily available, and we're paying similar prices for electricity. So there's not a crazy scenario out there. I mean, it could be a horrible scenario, but there's not some kind of crazy catastrophic disaster that has to happen to make EVs something that just everyone wants, just because of the cost effectiveness of gas prices just spiking. And I can see a scenario where that absolutely happens sooner rather than later.
I have a question, if I may. How long do we suspect that there will actually have to be governmental incentives to get people to buy EVs? At what point? What is the percentage of EV adoption that governments have to see where they finally say, well, it's not going to require incentives to get people to buy them anymore?
I can take it. The way I think about it is that there doesn't need to be any today. So if you, I think the incentives, in my opinion, I think the incentives are in place for everyone else to catch up to where Tesla has been this whole time. Because if you think about where Tesla ran out of their incentives in 2019, early, something like that, and they were still by far the best-selling EV in the US easily through 2019 and 2020 with a price penalty of $7,500, and people still bought them. So I would say that the incentives from the government are absolutely not needed for the EV adoption to continue, but because they are, just by happenstance, Tesla and other EV makers will win big. But I think this is my opinion. I think it's more of a bailout for other automakers to survive the decade to the transition, so that people will actually buy their cars. Because from a cost perspective, they're not competitive. Ford. We all know Ford, how much they lose on their cars. We know GM loses money on their cars. We know VW loses money on their cars. Tesla's the only profitable one, and without some sort of break to the consumer, these guys can't make money.
I think it's just going to depend on the administration too.
And real quick, Farzad, how much does Lucid lose on every car?
$500,000.
Yeah,
And that's not even a joke. Yeah,
555,000
per vehicle. Yeah,
yes,
per vehicle. It's wild.
But I also wanted to say, responding to what Brandon said, the highest state with EV adoption is California, where I live, of course. And I was out this last weekend with a family member driving around, and gas is $5.49 a gallon for the regular. Just regular old gas. So to his point, yeah, I think where you see the state with the highest gas prices also has the highest EV adoption rate. There is a correlation there. People sort of get kind of tired of that. But I also want to say that California is also one of, not the, but one of the highest household income states. So as car prices are the same across the nation, a EV in, say, Alabama costs the same as it does in California, yet my household income in California is a lot higher. Thus, it makes it a lot more of an affordable vehicle. And I think until EVs get down to that point, till we see the Model 2s, whatever we're calling them, the $20,000 EVs, that it'll continue to be a slower adoption. I think once we get down to that 20,000 price point, especially, I think that's when we'll see a spike, because a lot more people can afford those vehicles. And then that will, in turn, drop the price in the used market.
I think the counter, like the oxymoronic thing, I guess is the word I'll use. The thing that seems weird but is true is that for every dollar you spend, regardless of whatever EV you buy, if you buy a like for like vehicle, like say a Model 3 versus a 3 Series, which are kind of in the same class, right? over the life of the vehicle, the EV will be significantly cheaper to run per mile than the gas car. And this is across every single vehicle maker, because there's way less moving parts, so there's much less maintenance, and the fuel, gas versus electric is way cheaper. But it's the upfront cost that right now is the limiting factor. It's the thing that's like not allowing everyone to jump in. But once financing options and the initial cost of the car comes down, and we talked about this on Car Edge, Ray, with Zach as well, I think, is that if you're able to, or when you guys came on my channel, there is a world very, very soon where an automaker could come out with their options that says, hey, loan, electricity, insurance, all these things all in, $500 a month, and you drive a brand new EV off the lot. And that is the dynamic that the EV offers that the gas car doesn't today. And that, in my opinion, will be the thing that really kicks this into a different stratosphere. And it goes back to Brandon's point of cost. I think this is the EV advantage long term, is cost. It's not performance. It's not how it looks or how it performs or the technology. It's cost. The cost per mile of the vehicle is much cheaper. You just have to get it so that the person can afford it up front.
Do we think that as EVs end up taking more market share away from gas vehicles moving forward, that once that happens, the cost of electricity will skyrocket in this country?
That's an interesting question. That's a very interesting question. Yeah. So it all depends on useful capacity. Justice, did you have any thoughts there? I have a few, but I don't want to monopolize the conversation. Sorry.
No. Yeah, I'll just keep mine short because I do want to hear your answer to that. But this is something that I have said. A lot of the comments I'm reading from non-EV people are sort of misinformation, but this one is a real one that I do think is something to watch out for. Is once you're in a captive market, those who supply energy captively are always going to act the same. In this case, I said this before, a lot of these electric companies are municipal. So, and that's what I'm under. So they're government run and government owned. And I have never known the government to go, nah. We're going to go ahead and lower the rates and you can keep more of your money. I've just never heard that from the government. So I do see them going, oh yeah, well, we're going to have to raise rates because everybody's on the grid now. So this is a serious issue. I do think needs to be addressed. Obviously, solar panels and battery backups help solve some of this.
I don't even think you need that. So one of my good friends, Matt Smith, who comes on my channel often, he used to work for a utility for like 10, 15 years. So this dude is like super into the world of utility and electricity. So where electricity, the reason why costs spike is because there's way more demand than supply. And these plants are designed to sort of, ramp up in the day, ramp down during the night, ramp up during the day, ramp up during the night. But this ramp up, ramp down is the most expensive part of running a utility. What an EV allows you to do is it allows you to keep the levels a lot more even through the day and night. And so what I suspect will happen is as EV adoption grows, utilities will incentivize you to charge yours at night so that they don't have to shut down the plants, because shutting down the plants and putting them back up is what really costs them money. The reality is that the grid in the United States, the reason why it sucks is not because there's not enough capacity, it's because it's stupidly inefficient. We have all these plants that are maximally, like we have, say, the ability to service 1 trillion people in the United States, but because everybody is running their ACs at summer at 7 p.m. all at once, that's what really brings the load on the system. But if you are able to charge your EV at night, you literally don't need any additional capacity. That will allow the utility to keep their rates even overnight. So unless everyone decides to charge their cars during the day, then prices will spike. But what will happen, this is sort of supply and demand economics, the utilities will say, we will give you a break if you charge yours at night. And that's going to allow people to just say, well, I know my car is going to get me to where I need to be all day because it has 300 miles of range in like 99% of use cases. And so it's actually going to help the utility run more efficiently. So actually make them more profitable and save people money on fuel. It has like this dual effect. It's wild. And this is one of those like little known facts because there's not enough EVs on the road to experience this, but I predict this to happen over time for sure.
I mean that, yeah, so that might be a thing, but like, I mean, the government already taxes the crap out of gas. Everybody needs it, right? So I would imagine they're going to tax the crap. So it might be efficient and it might not cost the actual companies that are producing this electricity. The government's going to get its piece.
That's fair. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
That's a fair point.
But you know, to your point, Farzad, and I think Ray and I have talked about this on our show before. Was energy storage? I think helps on a lot of this. You know, as we're storing energy as it's produced. California here, we have a lot of green energy. So we're storing a lot of it. So you don't need the peaker plants, which is what you're talking about of that demand and all that cost is you have to build another power plant just for these couple hours a day that spike up. So when you don't need the peaker plants because you've stored the energy and you can disperse it evenly, or when the spikes come up, you already have the energy stored. You don't need to produce more of it. I think that helps. But in the end, I'm agreeing with Brandon on this. Is the government's the government, and energy suppliers are energy suppliers, and we've already seen in every sector what both of those entities do. And you know, I think there is some validity to they'll raise prices not because they need to, but because they want to.
Right.
I would say that would happen under any circumstance. So it's not really an EV thing. I mean, the EV thing might be the catalyst, but what that opens the door for is distributed utilities or new utilities that come on board that actually disrupt the old utilities through, say, solar and batteries. And, you know, those guys are, you know, I think it opens up an opportunity for a better way of doing it. And that's, you know, we might have a spike in the short term, but I think long term, it's just from a technology perspective, it's obvious. It's so much cheaper. It's just a matter of who's going to come in and disrupt, and is it going to be captive? It will be captive for a while, and you know, people will kind of hold on to their pearls for as long as they can. But I think, like anything else in history, at some point, somebody will come in and break it.
And I just saw a comment. A Sweaty Hiker actually makes a good point. So the taxes that we pay on gas help to maintain our roads, right? So if that money goes away, they got to get it somewhere. And it's got to be. So
I live in California. I can answer that one. I already pay a lot on my extra registration. It's $200 a year for that. And then now they're also talking a per mile tax to help replace that. So there are already plans in the works to help replace that gas tax. But I already pay extra on my registration to account for that.
Yeah, well, they'll double dip.
No, they will. The per mile, guarantee you, they come out with a per mile tax, Brandon. They're not going to get rid of the gas tax. So yeah, they'll just get double money.
Can I say something?
No.
I'm getting hungry, damn it.
Okay.
I mean, geez, you know, it's almost 2:00 here. I need to eat.
That's fair. So I just wanted to bring up one more comment from Roger here. Says this may depend on whether Elon supplies energy. That might be the next disruption. Let me tell you, he already does. Tesla already does supply energy in Texas. You can sign up for, Farzad, do you know what it's called? Is it just Tesla Energy?
Yeah, it's just a Tesla charging program, $30 a month, and then you just unlimited charging overnight, basically, with your Tesla.
Yeah. So they're already involved in it. They're already getting there. But let's go ahead and do final rounds, final thoughts for the day, so Ray can go eat.
Yeah, you want my final thought first?
Sure. Yeah.
Should I do turkey and Swiss or roast beef and American on rye toast? That's my final
roast beef.
thought.
Yeah, roast. Yeah, okay. I'm gonna go with the roast beef too.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll third that.
Okay. Yeah. Maybe with a little horseradish sauce on there.
Oh yeah. Okay, a lot of horseradish sauce.
Okay.
Bye everybody. I'm gonna go make myself a Reuben now.
Yeah.
That was my final thought. Thank you for your input, everybody.
Yeah. Brandon, any final thoughts from you?
All right. The Cybertruck's ugly. They're going.
We already
to
had that thought.
tax the crap out of electricity. Gas is going to $20 a gallon. What else did we get here? Yeah. Used car prices are going to crash. I'm going to lose my business. My wife's going to leave me. And we're all going to die. There we go.
Okay.
I mean, that last one, yes, Brandon. There's 100% chance we're all going to die.
I'm gonna try to do the opposite. I'm gonna do the optimistic look here. Okay, gas is going to $1 a gallon. We're all gonna live for. I'm just kidding. Just thank you guys. I think this conversation's super needed. I love how we can all sit down and just talk about what's going on. And I look forward to chatting with you all in the future. It's super fun for me. I think we're all sort of like super nerdy about these topics, and it's we really enjoy talking about it. So I just want to thank you, gentlemen, very much for getting together, and I love being part of this conversation. Thank you for inviting me. It's awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Farzad. Thank you, Brandon, for being here. Love the conversations. We like to get out there and talk. And for all those from Farzad's channel who are watching today and said, be nice. Just so you know, Ray and I do a debate show where we just argue. That's what we do. So
In a nice way.
Yeah, in a polite, we try to be polite, but it's okay to have difference of opinions. And we're
Absolutely.
perfectly okay with that. So please, if you thought we were mad at each other, we weren't. At no point does that ever happen. So thank you, everyone, for being here. Thank you, guys, for being on the stream. I'm going to go sign up for Neuralink so I can live forever. Another Elon Musk company. So have a great day, everyone.
Just make sure you have Twitter installed.
Yes, yeah, of course. I think it just comes across your eyes automatically once.
Yeah. Just scrolls through your eyes.
Yeah. Have a good day.